All right, Christina, I'm genuinely so excited about this because I did a GI map, was it like 2 months ago now? And it came back and I had never, I feel like this is so bad of me as someone in this space, but I had not done a GI map until recently. And I think it's something everyone should do. I think it should be like one of the first things people do when they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it was very informative. Obviously, there are other tests that could give you more pinpointed looks into what's going on in your gut and other symptoms that you may be having. But I was like, oh my gosh, what is Akkermansia? It says that I barely have any of that. And have some critters. And it was, yeah, very eye-opening. So we'll get to that, but I do want to just start at the very beginning to just get to know you a little better. So can you walk us through your journey as a dietitian and what led you from, as I understand it, you started in pediatric nutrition to becoming so passionate about the microbiome?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, my journey as a dietitian did start in pediatrics, and I fell in love with the gut microbiome during that time. I started my career as a dietitian in the NICU, handling teeny tiny fragile infants, trying to feed them, trying to grow them. And interestingly enough, the gut microbiome, your first experience in the world or how you're brought into the world and then the first things that you're fed actually really shape what kind of microbiome you're going to have going into adulthood. So it's thought that like by age 3, like your gut microbiome is set up. That doesn't mean that we can't
Wow.
influence it or change it, but there are a couple of things along the way, very early on, the way that you're born and then what you're fed really sets you up for the microbiome that you're going to take into adulthood. That became super interesting to me. We started a donor human milk bank at our children's hospital because we just saw the impact that human milk had on these fragile infants. And interestingly, Akkermansia, it's not an organism that you'll find in the environment or in your fermented foods or playing in the dirt. It's
Right.
anaerobe, so that means a single molecule of oxygen will destroy Akkermansia. However, the only food that it's ever been isolated in is breast milk. So that just brought
Wow.
me full circle to when I heard about Pendulum. And I heard about the work that they were doing with these novel strains. I had to be a part of it. And so, of course, as a dietitian, I love the science and the research. And Pendulum really has that science and research to back up what they're doing. And so I had to be a part of it.
I feel like if we just ended it right here, I would be so content because you answered such a huge question of mine. And I was going to bring this up. I was not breastfed.
Yeah.
And this is not to shame. I like never want to shame anyone. This is just like my experience. I was not breastfed. I was formula fed. And I think like back in that time, I'm turning 30 this year. 30 years ago, it was just like you feed your baby formula and it
Yeah.
was perfectly fine. And still, it's still like that. But I think there is now a little more push of, hey, if you are able to breastfeed, that is, how do I word this? I don't want to say, but it is a better choice. It is more helpful for your baby. If you're not able, maybe donor milk, like what you did, that's amazing. It's such a supportive thing. And in these formulas, especially in America, it sucks. It's like there's these seed oils that are required to be in the formula, and you're not getting a lot of the beneficial bacteria that come from mama. So I'm like, is that why I have such low Akkermansia? Like close to none because I wasn't breastfed. And I have such a clean diet. I'm in the health and wellness world. I know what I'm doing, but why is it that it's so low? You're nodding your head. That could be
Yeah.
it from a baby.
Yeah, and I don't want to blame mom because like you
Yeah.
said, like it's stressful enough being a new mom. So as long as you can feed your baby somehow, some way and keep them
Yes.
alive, like you're winning, right? But I
Yes.
we know more now than we did. I'm an 80s baby. Doctors gave moms medicine to dry up their milk. Like it just
Oh my
wasn't
gosh.
what you did.
Yeah.
And no fault to anybody, mamas in the 80s. Like we just did what we did. But I think we know more now. We know more about the benefits of human milk. And even just a little bit, like the first couple of months is better than nothing and will
Mhm.
give baby a great start. And then even formula feeding along with breast milk to keep up with the supply and demand. That is a great choice too. But if baby can get a little bit of human milk, it really does. We're learning. It's one piece of the puzzle, but we are learning that does really help to set up the gut microbiome moving forward.
Okay, so if for whatever reason mom is unable to breastfeed the entire time, supplementing with a little breast milk can make all the difference. Even if they're unable to, would you say donor milk might be the next best option?
Yeah, it really is
Mm.
because we're humans and human milk was designed for us. And not to put down dairy or anything like that. If you consume dairy and it works for you, like that's great. But it is cow's milk made for baby cows. And
Right.
human milk is specifically designed to meet the unique needs of humans. We know more. If you can get your hands on human milk, like it definitely is the best start.
So is there no Akkermansia in things like colostrum or cow's milk?
Oh, you're seeing like colostrum because whenever I hear the word colostrum, I think liquid gold
Right.
from humans. And so it's interesting to hear about colostrum being promoted now as
Mm.
like a health. I don't know. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. It's like whether or not I think that's beneficial for us as humans. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think there is, and maybe there's Akkermansia in cow's colostrum initially, but then there would have to be special measures to keep it alive through the
Oh,
processing
that's right.
and manufacturing. And they don't make those claims that there's
Hmm.
Akkermansia in it. So I would venture to say probably not.
Yeah, if there was, they would be announcing it as much as they could.
Yeah, yeah. There's a chance that maybe it helps to promote Akkermansia, right? And helps to create a favorable environment within the gut microbiome that Akkermansia can thrive and grow and flourish. But I honestly don't know when it comes to cow's colostrum,
Okay,
but how it measures up.
we keep saying Akkermansia. I didn't even know what that was until a month ago. So can you explain what that is, why it's so important?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Akkermansia, its full name is Akkermansia muciniphila, and we can nerd out on the name if you want to later. But this is a keystone strain. So if you Google keystone strains in the gut microbiome, Akkermansia, maybe because it starts with an A, but it's at the top of the list. And so it's an anaerobic strain that lives in the colon. So the colon is an oxygen-free environment, and that's where Akkermansia lives, and that's where it performs its functions. And it really has two main benefits or things that it does for us as the human host. One of those things, it helps with gut barrier integrity. So when you
Mm.
think about things like leaky gut or inflammation in the body as a result of the gut being too permeable, Akkermansia plays a really important role in that gut barrier integrity. Which is interesting because as a new dietitian, when I heard about things like leaky gut, I was like, that's not possible. There's no
Right.
way our bodies would allow the contents of what's in the bowel to be like leaked into systemic circulation. Like, there's just no way that's happening. Turns out it is happening. And bugs like Akkermansia play a really critical role in helping to keep that border secure and
Mm.
keeping things like toxins and opportunistic bacteria and pathogens. It helps to keep them out of systemic circulation because as you can imagine, when those things get into circulation, the body's saying, "What is this? I don't
Mm.
recognize this. This is foreign." And so that elicits an inflammatory response. So you can tie Akkermansia back to helping to reduce inflammation systemically in the
Mm,
whole body and then also locally, like in the bowel. And then the other thing that it does, and it has more of a metabolism benefit, but it helps to create short chain fatty acids in the gut and specifically things like butyrate,
mhm.
which if your listeners have never heard of butyrate or short chain fatty acids, like I encourage you to go down that rabbit hole because there are so many reasons why we want good, adequate short chain fatty acid production in the gut. And Akkermansia is like a really key player in helping us to produce butyrate. If someone is missing butyrate, if they're not making their own GLP-1 hormone in the gut, a lot of people don't know that GLP-1 is made in the gut. It
Yeah, it's
could
not
be,
just an injection.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
real.
Exactly. And your body has the ability to make its own GLP-1. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just a matter of missing these butyrate producing bugs because butyrate is really the key to unlocking that GLP-1 hormone. And that's why Akkermansia has so many metabolic benefits because of that butyrate. That really is like the key to unlocking that.
Wow, that's really interesting. Because I know people will supplement with so many different things, and it gets to a point where I think, yes, you might need that because your body's not either getting enough of it from your lifestyle, food, sun, whatever. But when does it get to a point where your body stops producing certain things because you're supplementing with it so much? Like, I always try to ask the question, how can we encourage our bodies to produce it more rather than just throwing so much money and supplements at our
Yeah.
body?
Yes, and I love that. And to that point, like I'm always thinking about what is my body missing that
Hmm.
it needs in order to perform these functions like hormones or metabolism, right? Sometimes it's just it's missing key nutrients
Right.
in order to perform these functions. And that has worked really well for me personally. And so I love that, right? Not just taking a supplement, but just giving your body back what it needs
Yeah.
to actually do that thing that you're wanting it to do. Because it wants to,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Yes. Your body is working for you, not against you, I promise.
Yes.
I always thought it was working against me. I dealt with cystic acne for over a decade, and I've done so much work to heal that, and there are still some times where I'll have a breakout. I'm like, where is this coming from? And I'm now curious, like looking at my low Akkermansia levels, I'm like, could this be? Because if it's if I don't have enough of that and that impacts the gut barrier and I'm having leaky gut and it's leaking and it's recirculating toxins, of course that can come up through my skin. So could that be a symptom? And what are other symptoms that could come from having low Akkermansia levels?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There is research to show that things like skin conditions are all related to gut permeability
Mhm.
issues. Yes, yeah, the gut is tied to every organ system, really and
Yeah.
truly. It plays a role and has an influence.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was another thing that impacted the state of my skin and overall health was the like literal years of prescriptions of antibiotics that I was on. Oh gosh, just so many, and they would make me feel awful. And the dermatologist would keep saying, "Oh, it's not working. Let's either up your dose or switch to a different one." I'm like, this can't be the answer. And then eventually in college, I never wanted to take Accutane, but I was at my wit's end and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it because I see my friends on it and their skin is all clear. Took it, it didn't clear my skin. And I'm like, I'm cursed. I'm truly cursed. And I took that medication, ruined my gut even further. I had bleeding dry lips for years, and I'm sure it did a number on my anxiety. But man, yeah, I feel like young people go through so much, even into adulthood, but like young people really are just thrown so many pills and band-aids that just worsen everything or temporarily appear like birth control makes it appear like all your symptoms are gone and you're fine, but really under the surface, something else could be brewing and you don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to deal with those imbalances some days,
Right.
right? Like the birth control will maybe fix the symptoms or the issues in that moment.
Right.
But then when you get down the road later in life and you start going through perimenopause or menopause, those same issues that were not fixed, covered up by birth control, will start to resurface. And that goes for anything. If issues in the gut are not dealt with, and you're given a prescription medication to just, which I'm not against prescription medications, like sometimes it's necessary,
Absolutely.
put a lid on things. But if we don't ultimately deal with the root cause,
Mhm.
then they will continue to surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also think because functional medicine also gets it wrong, a lot of practitioners will throw a ton of binders at you and say, you have these toxins recirculating, you got to take charcoal every morning. And I think binders are incredibly helpful for a specific period of time, but not to take every single day. And I think that really hurt me too. I was taking all these really strong herbals to, again, didn't do a GI map, didn't test anything. I'm just like, oh, I have these symptoms. I have bloating. I'm not going poop every day. I'm going to start bombing my stomach with these herbals, which I thought were so much, obviously, like so much better than taking medications. But that did a number on me too, because I think I was just destroying everything in sight and not helping the beneficial bacteria that I needed so much. Or I did help myself with cleaning out certain bad bugs in my gut, parasites, whatever. But then I didn't do the work to rebuild. And I think that's where a lot of people miss out is the rebuilding. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. What's so great about Akkermansia being available now in supplement form is before, if you didn't have it, like you just didn't have it. And maybe if you had a tiny bit, you could bring it back to life with high doses of polyphenols, but it would take a really long time. But now that more and more of these novel keystone strains, the technology is being unlocked to grow these organisms. And so now that they're available, then we have more options to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm so excited and so grateful that Pendulum exists because I've been taking it now for I think a month. And I'm like feeling like my stomach. And I had horrible bloating before and now it got better. But now I like wake up and I'm like, I have a flat stomach. I haven't had that in the longest time. It's really a new feeling and it's a nice feeling.
Yes, we hear about that all the time. There's a very specific organism, and I think you're taking the metabolic daily. Is that right?
Yes, I am, as well as the polyphenol booster.
Yeah, so the polyphenols, they directly boost and help and feed the Akkermansia. But there's another strain, I call them Batman and Robin. So I call Akkermansia Batman, and I call this secondary strain Clostridium butyricum, I call it Robin. And it's a butyrate producer, as its
Mm.
name suggests. It also helps to repair the intestinal lining as well. So, Akkermansia works on the mucosal barrier, helping the body to replenish and restore the mucosal barrier, but then Clostridium butyricum helps to tighten up the junctions, the gap junctions in between the epithelial cells. And so that's quite like border number two. So there's two ways
Mhm.
that toxins and pathogens can get into systemic circulation. They have to pass through the mucosal barrier first, and then they have to get through those tight junctions. So Clostridium butyricum is also another bug that is really helpful in restoring that gut barrier integrity.
Interesting. So I know you have a few different offerings, different like Akkermansia supplements. How would someone know which one is right for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always like to start by explaining our product portfolio by touching on the glucose control formulation first, because everything else that we manufacture flows down from that formulation
Mm.
and from the research that we did on that formula. So, glucose control is our highest dose of all of our strains. So it's a 5 strain formulation. It includes Akkermansia. It includes 3 butyrate producing bugs and then Bifidobacterium infantis, which is a really common strain. And so we studied this formulation in type 2 diabetes, and we were able to lower people's A1Cs and their after meal glucose spikes.
Wow.
So A1C is just like the number that you look at over a 3 month period of time that tells you whether or not your blood glucose levels have been in range or whether that you've been having like massive spikes, peaks and valleys. And what you want, rolling hills, you want your glucose levels to stay within a range and you want to avoid those spikes after you eat. And so the glucose control was really effective at helping to reduce that A1C number, but then also really effective at helping to reduce those after meal glucose spikes. So after you eat a cupcake, like you would expect that your blood glucose levels would spike. And when you're taking the glucose control, you'll notice that there's a significant reduction in those spikes. So
Wow.
that formulation, yeah, it's really cool. It's fantastic research. So it just goes to show that there's a way to attack this issue by restoring these organisms that are meant to do these functions of metabolism. And so that's the study on the glucose control. But then I also like to make sure that people understand that, yes, you're getting all of these metabolic benefits from these bugs. And then the metabolic daily that you're taking is actually the same 5 strains that are found in the glucose control, just at a lower dose, because not everybody needs the glucose control, right? Not everyone is walking around with type 2 diabetes. So we wanted to make a formulation that is less powerful, which also makes it less expensive. But that formulation is also inulin free. And so I definitely would have recommended that for someone like you with your history of GI issues and symptoms. The metabolic daily is definitely our most gentle formula, again, because it doesn't have that chicory root inulin, like prebiotic fiber in that
Mhm.
product, which we know can cause issues for people who maybe have food intolerances, they're gluten sensitive or they're dairy sensitive, or they just know they don't tolerate fiber very well. And then also patients who are dealing with conditions like SIBO, so small bowel bacterial
Mhm.
overgrowth. For those patients, the metabolic daily is a really nice option as well. And then we have a 3 strain formulation, which we call the GLP-1 formula. And those strains are the best butyrate producing bugs in all of our formulas. And so we singled them out and put them into the GLP-1 probiotic, kind of as a way to let people know that, hey, GLP-1 is made in the gut. And so you just might need these bugs. You just might need some Akkermansia and some Clostridium butyricum, and you will be on your way to making your own GLP-1 in your gut naturally. And so that's how that product was born. And then lastly, we have the 2 single strains of the Akkermansia at 2 different levels. And then, like you mentioned, the polyphenol booster, which really helps to feed the Akkermansia.
Yeah, could we talk about polyphenols for a second? So I also did, what test did it show me? Was it my oat test, organic acids? It was showing me that my vitamin C levels were like so low, and that blew my mind because I eat so much fruit. It really boggled my mind, but I'm like, okay, it might be because my body needs so much of it and it's going through a lot of it to repair my gut and all that. Yeah, what is the correlation between polyphenols and good gut bacteria and Akkermansia?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you had it as a baby, you got it from mom, you were breastfed, like you're set up properly. If you don't consume adequate polyphenols, then it dies. It's a sensitive bug,
Oh,
right? Like it just doesn't stick around.
right.
And so it's super important to consume dietary sources of polyphenols, specifically for Akkermansia. And we here at Pendulum, we're manufacturing one version of the Akkermansia strain. So there are many different types of
Mm.
Akkermansia. And we took the time to do an in vitro study. We just looked at the Akkermansia strain and we wanted to know, does it like all polyphenols? Does it prefer some more than others? And it happened to be that green tea extract, red grape seed, and pomegranate were the 3 that it really did the best with. So we, of course, we bundled those three together and put them as an afterthought. We put them together in the polyphenol booster. So the polyphenols are not in any of the formulations. It's sold separately just as a booster product if you have a tough time getting polyphenols in your diet.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you guys created it because I clearly needed it. Even though I have such a antioxidant rich diet, I still needed a little extra support.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're flooded with probiotic options on the market, especially these days. Like everywhere you look, probiotic, fridge probiotics, shelf-stable probiotics. But I feel like most people don't know what they're taking or if it's even helping. They're like, oh, I heard probiotics are good for me. I'm taking one. I don't see a difference, but I'm still gonna take it, I think. And then they keep taking the same probiotic for like years, and it's not doing anything. So, how is Pendulum reframing the conversation around probiotics from generic digestion support to targeted metabolic outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've been asking the wrong question about probiotics. And you're saying, like just thinking about probiotics and how they impact digestive health. Even your doctor, a lot of times Western medicine will say, oh, yeah, you're taking an antibiotic. Yeah, just go grab a probiotic.
Right.
No direction on strain specific or because they're not created equally. They all have different jobs and functions
Hmm.
that they do. And I think we're getting to a place now where just like you're prescribed a particular antibiotic, depending on what you're
Hmm.
dealing with a skin condition, they will choose a targeted antibiotic for that particular ailment. And we're getting to a place where we're understanding these organisms more. And so it's more of a targeted precision medicine approach to probiotics. And so if you're dealing with things like leaky gut, then like Akkermansia and Clostridium butyricum are your answer. If you're dealing with metabolic issues, then these strains we know are really helpful for those conditions. For the past 50 years or so, it's been the same lactobacillus and bifidobacteria type strains, which are incredible for human health, right? They offer us so many benefits, but they're easy to make, they're easy to grow, and oxygen doesn't destroy them, right? So they've been really easy to manufacture. And they're also the same organisms and strains that you're going to find in your fermented foods, in your
Hmm.
yogurts. You're going to come in contact with them in your environment, playing in the dirt, that sort of thing. But now we're getting to a place where companies like Pendulum, they're literally developing manufacturing process, science, technology, innovation to be able to grow some of these more novel and keystone strains that are sensitive to oxygen. So
Hmm.
our manufacturing facility is completely oxygen free. We pump nitrogen in order to keep the oxygen molecules out. So, yeah, we're really on the forefront of something new in terms of understanding what health benefits we can get from these probiotics and then making them available for us to take in supplement form.
And why is it that Pendulum is like the only company offering a live version of Akkermansia?
That's a good question. For the longest time, we were the only ones that existed. There were no other companies making Akkermansia. But people have caught on. It's become like almost a trendy thing, as all things do. And so there's lots of companies out there that are manufacturing Akkermansia or claiming to manufacture Akkermansia.
Mm.
I think you have to be really careful when you're buying supplements because it's not a regulated space. And so people can pretty much put any label or make any claim on their supplements and say that
I
their
know.
product has Akkermansia, right? And so some of these companies they do have Akkermansia, but it's a pasteurized Akkermansia. So they're not
Mm.
taking the effort to keep the organism alive. And so that's really what makes Pendulum different from all these other companies.
For better or for worse, the supplement world is just it's not regulated. There are pros and cons to all of that because I don't want government regulation in my supplements.
I know.
But there also comes with so many supplement brands and just products that are giving you nothing. It's just pure magnesium stearate. And they can say there's some things in it that I barely have anything, that just residual nothing.
Yeah,
So,
it can be a really scary place, even for someone like myself, who I consider myself educated and I'm in this space. I work in the industry. You have to be careful. You have to do your homework and you
yeah.
have to make sure that people can back up their claims and that there's third-party testing.
Yes. I always try to really hit that home because people still, and like I'll catch myself just like about to buy a supplement on Amazon. I'm like, okay, hold on, I know better. Pause before I spend this much money on a supplement that could be nothing. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so what are some maybe common misconceptions that you come across when it comes to gut health? And what do you wish people knew about supporting their gut, especially when it comes to like long-term health versus quick fixes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that something that I always try to stress is how important the gut is to all aspects of health. And I am particularly interested in things like the gut-brain axis,
Yeah.
how the gut is called the second brain. It houses a big majority of the immune system. And I just think it's really incredible how the gut and the brain communicate via the vagus nerve and how the gut influences the brain. And for example, here at Pendulum, we have a study that's currently underway in bipolar depression 1 and 2 and looking at these strains. And there's just you can go down a rabbit hole, but there's just so much interesting information about the gut and how it influences the brain. And so I think that's something that like I really try to talk about is that the gut influences so many aspects of our health, even from autoimmune disease to allergies and asthma. There's a connection for everything in the gut.
Wow. I am so curious to hear about the results of that study. Is that coming out anytime soon?
I think it's going to be a little while
Okay.
longer, but there's a lot of research out there that already currently exists outside of
Mhm.
pendulum, looking at Akkermansia, some of these other organisms and how they influence the brain and mood. Akkermansia is a GABA producer. That's really exciting. GABA is associated with feelings of calm and reduced anxiety, and Akkermansia is playing a role there as well, which I think is just the coolest.
It is the coolest. And I get a little annoyed like when I'm scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. And of course, everything I see is health and wellness. I'm on the health and wellness algorithm. And there's all this, it's very trendy to talk about nervous system regulation, and I'm all for it. It's one of my top topics that I am talking about, but it irks me that people are just saying try meditation and breath work, and that can be helpful. It can be. It could also be detrimental to some people who that's a whole other topic. But I'm like, what there's so much more, like deeper in possibly the gut or that we're not talking about. And it just feels like another band-aid that we're slapping on to be like, just do breath work and you'll regulate your nervous system. It's no, what if their gut is imbalanced and all they need is a little more nutrients to balance it out?
Yes.
Excuse me. Yeah, I don't know why I had to add that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it goes into like people being medicated for anxiety and depression. And of course, like I am not against those medications if it saves someone's life. That's incredible. And that happens all the time. But long-term use, is this supposed to be something you take for the rest of your life? I don't think so. I think we should it's amazing we have those supports to help someone immediately, but then what? And I think this is the then what.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Neurotransmitters are made in the gut.
Hmm.
So that should be like our first clue and indicator that, again, if you're missing some of these organisms, then you may feel the effects in terms of mood and anxiety, like you're talking about. And we also know too, which is super interesting when it comes to like cravings and metabolism, like for someone who they think, oh, I'll never lose weight, I just don't have the willpower to resist my cravings. Sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with willpower, and it has everything to do with the makeup of your gut. Because we know that some of these opportunistic and pathogenic bugs that are creating dysbiosis and symptoms, a lot of times they feed on things like sugar, refined carbohydrates. And so they're literally sending signals to the brain like, this is what we need in order to stay alive. Like, so you're craving this because of the organisms in your gut. And we find and we see here at Pendulum, we've actually studied this, that when you replace or crowd out those bad bugs and put these good strains in Akkermansia and some of these butyrate producers who need polyphenols and fiber, then people's eating habits start to change. And they write into us and they say like the most hilarious things, because a lot of them really don't understand what's happening, but they're like, I enjoyed eating a salad today. Like I craved eating a salad, and like it wasn't a chore. Finding myself reaching for fruits and vegetables, you're like, that's just not me. Who am I? But it makes sense, right? Like you're putting these good bugs back, and they're now sending the signals to the brain that like that says we need fiber, we need polyphenols. And so that's what people end up reaching for. So I find that fascinating.
That is really funny. And I'm really glad you said that because some people beat themselves up and guilt themselves, being like, oh, I have no self-control. Oh, I am this, I am that. And it's, no, there's like another being speaking for you and controlling you, essentially.
Yes, it's creepy, but that's exactly what's going on. You're
Yeah.
not as in control as you think you are.
I'm sorry I had to make that sound so creepy, but it's true. I have just a few more questions for you. You've mentioned a few studies that you guys are putting together, but what's next for Pendulum? Are there any upcoming innovations or areas of research you're especially excited about?
Yes. So the study that I mentioned in bipolar depression, that is, I think that's one of the coolest ones. We also have a study in postmenopausal osteoporosis. So it just goes to show like how many different applications there are for these strains. But yeah, we are not stopping at Akkermansia. So we have other novel anaerobic strains on the horizon that will hopefully come out next year. I'm not making any promises. But yeah, we want to be the company who is innovative and bringing these novel keystone strains to the marketplace. Another really interesting strain that plays well with Akkermansia and is paired with Akkermansia in the literature quite often. So I won't say its name, but those are a couple of like clues and hints.
I'm super excited about that. And then I can't believe I missed this one stat that I want people to hear. It's a shocking one. Yeah, you mentioned, I think via email, that 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. That's almost everyone. That's crazy. What's going on there? What's contributing to that in- astounding stat?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things contributing to that. And like I have major beef with like our food here in America.
Yeah.
Like it's full of toxins. It's hard to, even if you're eating the right foods, they can still be loaded with toxins. So it's, I think we're making progress to get some of this junk out of our food. That's one of the, where was I going with that? Oh my gosh, pause. What do we, like, where was I
Yeah.
going? I just started going off the rails. What was the
Beef
extent?
with the food industry in America and
Yeah, because how was I
why
trying?
Americans are so metabolically
Oh,
unhealthy.
metabolically
Yeah.
unhealthy. Okay, hold on. Let me write that down. Okay. I'm just gonna do that whole thing over again. Sometimes I do that. Oh my gosh, my brain is just, I don't know where I was. Okay. Yes, so we are or Americans are very metabolically unhealthy, and I think a lot of that goes back to our food and our food system, which I have a lot of beef with the toxins that are
Mhm.
in food. I think we're doing a better job at getting some of that junk out. But even for me personally, as a dietitian, I thought I was eating well, but then I got a blood test and my A1C was high. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Like this, I'm a dietitian. Like this doesn't happen to me. Once I started taking control of trying to figure out like what was wrong. And for me, that looked like wearing a continuous glucose monitor, which they're super available for people that don't have diabetes. They're available for people. And I encourage folks that are in that metabolically unhealthy space to wear a CGM because it's very telling. I think that for me, I didn't eat like sugar and things like that, that I thought that's what spikes your blood sugar, but
Right.
different. So what spikes my sugar for me may not necessarily for you. So it's all about getting to the root cause, right? Like figuring out what it is that works for you and what doesn't work for you. But yeah, I think that our food has a big part to play in terms of like why so many people are dealing with metabolic issues, which is why these strains are so important.
Yeah, I'm sure my audience is tired of me telling this story over and over again, but when I go to Italy and I eat the pizza, the pasta, the cheese, the sweets, and all the pastries, and I'm like losing weight, I'm not breaking out, I feel amazing. Of course, there are other factors like the environment, like just being on vacation and stress-free, and I'm sure the air is cleaner and et cetera, et cetera. I'm walking a lot more than ever. Yes, that contributes to it. But it's a fact. They have less pesticides in their food. They're not using glyphosate. I can eat wheat there and I can't really hear. But I will if I really want, I rarely make pasta, but if I don't like gluten-free pasta, I'm sorry, I will find an Italian imported pasta and make it. I never do that, but if I would, that's what I would choose.
Yes, I have
Yeah.
heard that from so many people. Like a dear friend of mine, actually, she says the same thing and she loves pasta and she's spent time in Italy and I don't understand like why I can eat it there and I can't
Hmm.
have it. I can't have bread and I can't have pasta here.
Hmm.
But yeah, like you're saying, I think it goes back to the things that are being used on and in our food. And so it's not enough to just eat the right foods. Like you have to make sure that they're free of toxins. Like
Yeah.
that's another a battle and it's just it can be exhausting sometimes, but
Oh, I'm so tired of it. Even as someone who, like, this is my job. I was just talking to a friend yesterday and I'm like, I'm so over talking about what's in our food. I'm like, I'm sick of it. But I think we get to a point, the goal is to get to a point where you're informed enough to make the best decisions for yourself and your family, where you don't have to be like glued to your phone and like listening to every podcast. Listen to this one, it's great. But like obsessing over every piece of information about health, because that's in a way not healthy. I've been obsessed, and that extremism was not healthy for me. But again, just being informed enough to make the best decisions and not just being blind about the products you're putting in your cart and just seeing like gluten-free on the front of the package and being like, oh, healthy, and putting it in your cart. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
yeah, no, and I think to that point, like I making small changes, right?
Mhm.
Not thinking that you have to change everything all at once overnight.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
certainly been guilty of that. And everything in the pantry must
Yep.
go. My husband, really? Because like then we were not going to have any food. Can we just maybe focus on one thing at a time? So that
Yeah.
has been very healing for me, like in my mindset.
And
Okay,
for your wallet.
yeah, yeah, and your wallet, right? We're just going to focus on one thing at a time, one small change at a time. And then before you know it, those small changes stack up and it becomes easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation. It was really eye-opening for me. I learned a lot, so I'm so grateful. And yeah, I'm taking the metabolic health
Metabolic
supplement
daily.
as, yes,
Yep.
metabolic daily, the polyphenol booster. How long would you say, is this something I should continue taking forever? Is this like on and off? Or like, what are your suggestions?
Yeah, I've always been, like you mentioned earlier, I've been a fan of kind of cycling and
Hmm.
rotating probiotics. We do say a minimum of 3 months. So just
Okay.
set the expectations. You want folks to give it a fair shot. It takes time to make changes to the gut
Yes.
microbiome. So, a minimum of 3 months. A lot of times people will start to notice things a lot sooner, like a change in stool consistency
Mm.
or a change in cravings and things like that we talked about. But a minimum of 3 months, but you can certainly do them for longer. But then I'm a fan of cycling on and off. But these
Me
are
too.
strains that I consistently come back to because of what we were just talking about, because of all of the insults to gut barrier
Hmm.
integrity, like the toxins in our foods. That's one of the main reasons why the gut barrier gets attacked, is because
Hmm.
of the toxins that are found in our food. So I do find myself coming back to these, recommending them again and again for people.
Yeah, and I think 3 months, like you should give any supplement 3 months. A lot of people expect overnight quick fixes, and that's just not reality. Yes, like you might instantly feel a little better with certain things, which is great. But yeah, 3 months, really, that's good advice. And I like to cycle my supplements as well. And something like Akkermansia is something that should just always be there in your in your cabinet or wherever you store your supplements to come back to whenever you think, okay, this might be a good month to like supplement with this and just give myself a boost. So, yeah, I appreciate that answer. Thank you so much
Oh,
for coming
thank
on.
you. Yes, it's been a pleasure. What a great and fun conversation. So thanks so
Yes,
much for having me.
thank you.